Okay, we're live, guys. Empires of the Millennium meet the Fatimids. We're going to do, and so this is the third faction we're going to look at. And the Fatimid Empire in the game kind of starts in hiding at the beginning of the game, and they are uh, one of the Muslim empires that would kind of be the successor to the Umayyads in North Africa, and then later the Middle East. And also sort of the founders of Shia Islam, but the Shia Sunni split hasn't happened yet. Are they Arabic or not? Yes, they're Arabic. What is their descent to the uh, relationship to the Prophet Muhammad? That's a tougher one to answer. But this book was fantastic, I thought, by Tim McIntosh Smith. It's called Arabs, and it gave a history of the Arab people, language, tribes, right? And he says, as for the Fatimids, even their ancestral Arabness is in doubt. So they were always seeking to find a legitimate reason to take the caliphate and prove their familial heritage. But when they founded Cairo, the Fatimid ruler Al Muiz said, when he was securely installed in the citadel, he summoned the people to a general assembly. He half drew his sword and said, "This is my pedigree." Then he scattered large amounts of gold among them and said, "And this is the record of my noble deeds." And they all cried out, "We hear and obey." So it was very much uh, the religion interwoven with the real power of the time. I think the real power was really more important than the religion, I guess is my point to that. So let's look at the Fatimids and see how they start in the game and where we're going with them and what you can do with them and how they can win. So back with the Vassal module, and the Fatimids start in a strange situation. So if you play the Fatimid faction, you start with one cylinder here in far west Africa, Sejomasa. Okay. One cylinder south of Baghdad in Sawad, and one cylinder in Khorasan. Okay. Essentially, these were offshoots of mainline Islam during the time, right? They would eventually become Shia, the Shia offshoots, of which actually there's multiple offshoots going on. But essentially, they're people who took different approaches to the succession after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and they took exception to how things were being run and ruled in the prior Muslim empires of the Umayyads and the Abbasids. And so in the game, they are kind of the underground faction to start, right? Your goal early on is to get cylinders on the map. We'll talk about how you do that. And basically, another thing the Fatimids will do in the early game, like the first three turns, first three epochs of the game, is spend a lot of time messing with the other factions, making little moves to take control of areas. They really don't have an incentive to not take event cards, right? So they can take event cards pretty much at will, even if they're the ones that don't apply to the Fatimids directly, but can hinder the other empires in the game. And also, because of that, they're in a situation where they can do a lot of diplomatic wrangling and ransoming empires based on, what's good or not for that empire as opposed to what's good or not for the Fatimids. So those are the only three pieces you start with. Okay. And your first leader, if we back out, is Idris the First. And Idris the First was the founder of the Idrisids dynasty. And the Idrisids were a dynasty in the Maghreb, North Africa. And he had a little bit of a following and a little bit of a military presence. But ultimately, he's wiped out. Actually, was poisoned. There's an event card in the game, but he was poisoned by a toothbrush. Okay, so he died from a poisoned toothbrush. Idris the First. So your special limit is you can only have one cylinder, one cube in any one location at one time during the first epoch. Right. So once you've mustered a cube in Sigil Masa out here, you'll be done adding pieces to that location. Right. So there's not a lot you can do on the map to threaten, especially areas with high densities of pieces because of that. You want 5 or more cylinders on the map. You start with 3. So the goal is to get your cylinders out and then keep them hidden, right? So that they can't get eliminated. An assertive caliphate, which means you do have an incentive to mess with the caliphate track. Control of 1 or more areas should be pretty straightforward unless the Umayyads are destined to wipe you out in North Africa or something. And econ of 10 plus, this is, you're trying to make money for the secret network, underground network. You have a military 1, an admin of 1, right? So you're only going to be able to administer in 1 location. So don't go adding a bunch of cubes early on. And a muster of 1. So you can get a cube out into 1 location during this turn. Okay, so you start with Fatimid the first, Idrisid the first as your first Fatimid leader, and then the secret network comes on the second turn. And the secret network allows you to add a cylinder to any 1 Fatimid space at the start of the second epoch. So you're no longer limited by the 1 cylinder, 1 cube as you were in the first epoch. And you get to add another cylinder to the map. So if you hit your goal and have 5 out, now you should have 6 out at the start of the second epoch. Same deal, you want to be messing with the caliphate track. You want to maintain control of a province. You want money in the bank, and you want to start converting locations to Muslim religion. So you're kind of working alongside the Abbasids with that goal this epoch turn. You don't have any military. So if you are attacked or you do the attacking, you're not going to roll any dice. So be aware of that. You're a secret network. These guys are underground. Okay. Administration just 1. So again, you'll have 1 kind of stronghold you can hold on to. After 0. So you're not going to be able to add cubes to the map in this turn. You can steal them, but you won't be able to add any. Okay. And then the third epoch leader are the Ismailis. And this is sort of the start of Shi'ism. And the Ismailis had been growing during the first 2 epochs that were covered in the game, but by this third epoch, they had becoming more, I would say, of a public kind of feature of the world at the time. So they'll be in more locations. Your goals are about the same as they've been through the first 3 epochs. You do get to add a Fatimid cylinder and revolt into Syria. So they start kind of appearing in Syria at this time or coming out from underground at the start of Epoch 3. So you'll have Syria in mind as a location to target. But again, they're still limited stats-wise. 1 military, 1 admin, 1 muster. So you won't be building your empire yet. But however, in the 4th epoch, your main leader comes out. This is Al-Mahdi. He is the founder of the Fatimid dynasty. And at the start of the 4th epoch, you get to add 3 cubes to any 1 location with a Fatimid cylinder. So for the first 3 epochs, you kind of want to be planning for the appearance of Al-Mahdi as your ruler, right? And so you can be flexible. There's a lot of different options in North Africa and the Middle East that you might be able to tuck away your pieces. Then in Epoch 4, you need to get moving, right? So you need to control 5 or more locations. Muslim needs to be in 15 or more locations. You want a non-Abbasid caliphate, so you're still messing with the caliphate track. You want to build a disc this turn, 1 or more discs, or steal a disc, which can be a good move. And then control Ifriqiya, Barca, and Egypt, right? Or Egypt, Barca, Ifriqiya. So the North African coast you want to be yours. Egypt in particular is going to be very important for the Fatimids because of the economy and also the proximity to potentially building Cairo, because then in Epoch 5, you get Al-Hakim as your leader. I don't know what happened to his picture. It didn't pull through on the card. But the special for Epoch 5 is if the Fatimids control Fustat, which is this space, then Cairo is founded. You build Cairo. So Fustat leaves the map. Cairo is brought into the map. I guess I could have a marker that flips. I didn't think of that until just now. So by marching into Cairo during this turn and taking it over, you add a victory point, victory city, automatic victory city to the map with 2 econ, A communications, close to Jerusalem, close to Baghdad. So it completely changes for the second half of the game. You're trying to control 5+ still, Muslim 15+, still messing with the caliphate, 1 or more discs, and keeping control of that Ifriqiya, Barca, Egypt, North Africa channel as well during the 5th epoch. But now you have military rating of 3 dice. Admin rating goes up again, so you're up to 8 now. And your muster rating is up to 2, so you can bring on 2 cubes per location, at least, depending on whether or not you have a base there. So you can see by Epoch 5, the Fatimids have developed into a force on the map. Epoch 6, Mustansir will be your leader. Add a revolt to either Egypt or Syria at the end of Epoch 6, but the other factions in the game decide which. Okay, so you're going to be trying to build in both of those locations, Syria, Egypt, and the Maghreb. So the Maghreb, your empire goal is to stretch from the Maghreb into Syria. But, you know, in trying to hold all three, you might spread yourself thin, and the other sides can kind of pick away at you at the end of the epoch. Control 8 plus, Muslim 16 plus. Again, working toward the non-Abbasid Caliphate, and you want, for an automatic victory, you need a Fatimid Caliphate anyway. So you need to be thinking about taking over the Caliphate. 2 or more discs, you need to add a disc and control, like I said, Syria, Egypt, and the Maghreb. And then in the 7th epoch, you'll have Badr al-Jamali, who was administrator who effectively took over the Fatimid Caliphate and dynasty during this time period. At the start, you can either shift the Caliphate or add 2 cubes to any city. So he's a very effective leader. This is the height of the Fatimids, and the military ratings up to 3, administrative ratings up to 13 spaces, muster ratings up to 2. So by the 7th epoch, the Fatimids are going to be potentially the power in the game, especially if they're able to shift the Caliphate at the start of epoch 7, putting them possibly in a position to take a win. Okay. Control of Armenia is one of your goals. That's because Badr al-Jamali was actually an Armenian administrator. So he was from Armenia, but he lived and worked in Cairo and essentially ran the empire from there. And then Epoch 8, you'll have Al-Afdal. I'm not going to mess with butchering the second name here. But Al-Afdal is actually one of Badr's sons, Badr al-Jamali's sons. And he was the Fatimid ruler at the time of the First Crusade. And he didn't believe that the First Crusade was as threatening as it actually was until the Crusaders reached Jerusalem. He actually thought the Western forces might join up with him to fight against the Abbasids, who had been a long-time thorn in his side, right? So their special rules, you can't march into Jerusalem until it's controlled by a Christian faction. Christian factions at this point are the Byzantines, the Franks, or the Norse, would be the Normans at this point of the game. Okay? You want to control from Maghreb through the Levant, continuous spaces. So, you know, he's not as effective a ruler as his father was, but he still can give you the ability to do some stuff during that 8th and final epoch. Okay, those are your leaders. We'll look at your options, and then we'll get you out of here. So we'll go to the player aid chart, and the primary march is the same as other factions. Muster is the same as other factions. They can raid. Fatimids can have a raid like other factions. Subjugate like others. Build like others. Cost 3 cylinders. They can treaty, which we saw with the Byzantines. This gives the Fatimids a diplomatic ability to block campaigning, which can help them in those 3rd and 4th epoch areas where they might be in trouble. And they can activate neutrals, right? So nothing out of the ordinary in the primary actions card, but they have a bunch. They've got 7 to choose from, okay? The special actions card does have some different wrinkles to it. The first being they can do an occultation action, which will add or hide cylinders to the map. So they can either add up to your leader's muster rating in any one location with Muslim or mixed religion, add a cylinder. So they're the only faction which can add a cylinder in this method. It's generally just 1 in one location. Or they can hide all the cylinders that are on the map. Okay, so the Fatimids don't hide with emissary, they hide with occultation. Otherwise, the emissary is the same as the other factions. And then they have a naval raid, jizya, a dawa, and a maula. Just like the Abbasids when we saw the Abbasids. There's no differences between those as far as the number of pieces you need or where you can do them. The jizya, the tax action, happens in a province where the Fatimids have control in a hidden cylinder. Okay, so that's how the Fatimids work. And early in the game, you'll be messing with everybody else. By the end of the game, you might be the strongest player in the game. So they're going to undergo one of the greatest evolutions in the game. I think they'll be a fun faction to play because of that. That puts me at 15 minutes. So I'm going to end it here. And hopefully this is helpful for whoever's playing the green Fatimid faction in one of these playtests. Thanks.